I think the importance of the ICAA is to actually be what some might call the other voice. Chicago has a very robust, confident voice that speaks about its modernist heritage. The lineage of Wright and Sullivan and Meese is touted to the exclusion of the legacy of people like Benjamin Marshall, Daniel Burnham, Howard Van Doren Shaw, and the ICA can speak to that other.
There are many established and evolving traditions in architecture. The classical expression is the most enduring, probably because it represents a refinement over millennia of very basic principles and ideas in architecture.
The Western classical tradition, if we think of it as a language, there's so many different dialects as one adapts those principles to different climates and different cultures through time, but you can deal with issues of partie and tectonics and hierarchy and symmetry and how they all come together.
Architecture that engages architectural traditions can speak to a broader arc of history. The courthouse in Tuscaloosa was designed for a specific purpose, but also a particular place with its own identity, its own history, its own culture. And the classical language of architecture is one that is easily recognized in the South. This building is derived from Greek precedent, so it reflects the Athenian origins of our system of democracy and justice. And it has to dignify and ennoble what is really a very serious undertaking, which is the adjudication of American law. We adopted not only the representational aspects of classical architecture, but its ordering methods, quite similar and sympathetic to the design and organization of modernist buildings. So it is a building that is modern, flexible, legible. It's a building that can be used intuitively by people that are visiting it the first time for a trial or people that use it every day. The second floor gallery is the point of access to the courtrooms. It is beautifully illuminated, and it was designed as a spacious gallery in which is installed a cycle of paintings that portray the history of the Tuscaloosa region. When you're building for the public in a responsible way, you want to produce buildings that can be long-lived, not just materially, but aesthetically.
When we talk about classical architecture, we are dealing with everything from the vernacular up to the highest, most refined classical. There isn't a clear divide. It's a spectrum.
The client came in with a whole stack of American arts and crafts books and lots of books on American bungalows. His wife wanted something that was probably a little bit more contemporary, but which she described as calm and zen-like.
We've been practicing together for 30 years, and I think we've really kind of developed our own idea of what our architecture is, which is really a combination of contemporary space, meaning continuous space, and how we really reinforce it with traditional detailing. Once you continue trim around a room, the rooms feel really calm because things are connected, and it just feels like the exterior walls, which in this house are mostly glass, really just becomes background. It's almost like something knitted.
The house as a kind of arts and crafts tour de force is something that we were sort of conscious of, and that was a great fun. I think the way I look at and the way Julie looks at architecture really had to do with the idea of history as a source of ideas. We also were involved in the notion that architectural form had meaning, particularly with respect to residential architecture, that it was rich in associations, all of them supposedly pleasurable and life-enriching.
remember as a student, like you're saying, like, what should you make something look like? Okay, that's like an impossible question. If you have your favorite architects and you cull things from those favorite architects, but if you're really trying to make something that's, let's say, unique to your voice, which we all want to do as architects, then what is that? So somehow having these kind of starting and stopping points, and you have to make your own construct in which those things exist. It's kind of this abstract problem where when it's finished, and it's right.
I think part of the reason that I really graft towards classical architecture is because there's a logic, there's a rationale to it, and there's actually parameters that you're working within. The definition of classic is it's a standard, it's the ideal. And so when you look at classical architecture, that is the ideal that I have in the back of my mind as I'm working on my own projects and designing things.
As a classicist, I approach every project establishing some sort of meaning or content. To the extent that our building makes use of a particular form of a known and important building, we're trying to tie our structure to that building for what that building is. Not purely as a shape, but by way of the history of that building.
The Institute of Classical Architecture and Art was created to advance both the practice and appreciation of classical architecture and the allied arts. For us in Chicago, our main focus has been education. We have lectures, we have had tours, classes, seminars, intensives.
The ICAA has served a wonderful role for so many people who are interested but maybe not even architects, or for folks who might have come from a very different educational background who might have a sense that there's something that was missing in that education, or as the demand of a client arises, that they don't want to just kind of get the detail on there, but get it right. Maybe it's designing a Doric capital for a particular building, or it's looking at the skills of wash rendering and sketching on site.
The pencil doesn't ask questions, it doesn't ask for instructions, like the computer. There's no limiting intermediary. It is from the memory through the mind, through the hand, back through the eyes again. I learned to draw through trial and error. When I went to school, I learned analytical drawing, and I also took drawing courses in the School of Fine Arts at Cornell. And I had a drawing professor who took a very specific approach to my education. There were certain things I was forbidden to do, but the fine artists were allowed to do. I could use no line work, no sharp drawing instruments, paper that had no tooth. So I was drawing with very crude instruments and using only shade and shadow, because he wanted to break me of the architect's habit of looking at things as being linear. So I got a great education from him.
This building, which is from the mid-1920s, allows the craftsmen that carved, that painted, that made the glass ornamentation, that made the chandeliers, it allowed them to exercise a craft. The effect this interior had on people in the 1920s is that they liked it a lot. By the 1980s, 1990s, people thought it was over the top, too gaudy. Now we like it again. The trick is not to tear down your whole history.
One of the things that separates classical and traditional architecture from modern architecture is the idea that to have great architecture, you had to have commodity, the function of the building. You had to have firmness, how well is it put together. And you had to have delight. That's what some of these details do. They allow us to have that delight without necessarily knowing what it all is there, but it allows us to wonder.
Whenever I'm in a space that's really compelling, I try to figure out why. What about it is making me have that emotional connection? I really think gardens are to really revive people. You want to come home and just kind of be in a peaceful place. This garden having more of an Italian feeling to it. It's organized, it's fairly quiet. There's things that reflect focal points and views. Those kind of geometries, they've proven out to be pleasant to our brain, and there's a reason why they resonate with us.
From the moment that we started the Chicago Institute of Classical Architecture and Art in 2009, one of our goals was to have an award program so that we could really focus on some of the best architecture in Chicago and in the Midwest.
I think the importance of having the Acanthus Award is it allows architects who are looking for a direction to their work to see exemplary work by others that have been given award recognition and to aspire to that.
We accept submissions from architects, from interior designers, landscape designers, craftsmen, even some students, because we'd like to see the next generation of architects represented. Anybody can become a part of the ICAA.
It's a great way to come together, share resources, share support and ideas, and I'm thrilled that it's come to Chicago, to a city that is so known for its architecture. It's the first city of architecture in so many ways.
It's a great organization. We'd love to have new people out. We always welcome new guests and members, and we'd like to see them be a part of what we're doing here in Chicago.